Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk a little bit about the separation, we'll say, between the player characters and the player. I'm Daniel, this is Bandit's Keep. We talk about D&D and role-playing games here. I also have some live actual plays, as they say, so if you guys like that stuff, go ahead and subscribe. So this kind of comes apart. I mean, it turns out that this has been resolved and I didn't have all the information, but what kind of sparked this part of the conversation was that my friend Andy was having a situation in his campaign. I'll put a link down below to his podcast, which is really great, Expedition to the Grizzly Peaks. And he was talking about one of the player characters had been blinded, and this made them, have severe penalties, and they couldn't kind of do a lot of things that the player character was made to do. And he talked about it a bit, and then he actually had a call in from the player. And what's interesting here is I was driving when I heard the first podcast to work, and I thought, well, that's unfortunate, and really something I thought, something he probably needs to do something, which is clearly why he was making the podcast. He was kind of like putting it out there because the player didn't seem very happy in the situation, and that was all fine. And I kind of, there wasn't any immediacy from my point of view to really reply to it. I was on my way to work, so I worked the whole day. And then I got in my car and I was driving back and I saw that there was another episode of the podcast. So I started listening to it, and it opened with a couple of, it's on Anchor. So if you guys don't know what Anchor is, you can like call in, which is very cool actually. So, and also there's a Bandit's Keep podcast there. So if you guys want to follow me there. Anyways, and the first two people, one of whom I haven't interacted with, but the other one was somebody who I had, kind of seemed to be taking the approach of, suck it up, and this should be a learning experience and this kind of thing. And between them and then also some of the stuff that Andy said, I think there was even the word millennial thrown in there once or twice, which that's a whole other side conversation there. Not that I'm a millennial, clearly. But I am Generation X, and the same crap they say about millennials, they said about us too. Although we probably really were slackers. So, anyways, a couple things kind of came to light. Immediately, I thought, this is. It's one thing to say, okay, your character, gets attacked by, or even falls in a pit trap. Something they didn't do. They didn't do anything to have this happen to them. It just happens to be, because that was the case here. There was like a random roll. Yeah, the rest of the session, maybe the next session, you're going to be like, okay, my character is injured or my character is dead or whatever. You're going to deal with that, right? That's part of the game, right? I mean, if there's no consequences to action, the game wouldn't be fun. So I totally agree with that. But there is this point where it's kind of like, you're here to play this game, and like, why would a player continue to play if you're going to present them with a situation where they're just unhappy? And I don't think that this is something that I know that Andy didn't do it unintentionally. And there are some benefits, of course, to making somebody, have some kind of a disability, whether it be an injury that's going to be healed eventually or not. It can be actually really interesting and good for role play. And that being said, if the player is not happy, playing that character anymore, and you kind of, I don't want to say force, because again, I wasn't there, and I got a lot more information since then, and apparently Andy had immediately told her, if you want to play somebody else. But I also know there's a bit of peer pressure, right? Like, if your character gets hurt, and then you're just like, well, my character is blinded now, or lost their hand, or whatever happened, and I don't feel like playing him anymore, it might be seen in the group as, okay, yeah, you're just being a baby, or whatever, So I think there is that peer pressure, even though, again, I'm projecting onto this. I have no evidence here. That the person wouldn't necessarily want to stop playing that character because they'd feel like they're giving up. And, you don't want to give up. Plus, you like your character, So I think that what got me, and it's funny because then coincidentally, I don't know if it was the same day or the next day or whatever, Seth Skorkowsky, who I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably know that he has a YouTube channel, which is really great. If you don't, I'll put a link to that as well. I follow him on Twitter, and he said, I'm going to actually read it because I don't like to misquote people. More than once, I've changed or reevaluated my opinions, not because I listened to the other side, but because I listened to the miserable jerks, sorry to the callers, who voice the same beliefs that And I realized how stupid it really sounds when said aloud. This is actually kind of how I felt. I was thinking, I am kind of, uh, a pretty brutal GM. Like I if you do something and it causes your character to die or to be injured or whatever, I will roll with that. I am absolutely not the GM to be like, oh, you know what, I'm going to give you a chance. I am not that person at all. Um, but I do think that in most cases, I hope, and maybe my players can, I don't know, maybe tell me privately. Well, you can put a comment here. I'm sure there's times, nobody's perfect, right? I'm sure there's times where I did this, where I maybe pushed it too far, where it no longer felt like you were punishing the character for their actions, but instead the player. And this can be very tricky to navigate because, maybe you're not doing that on purpose, clearly. And we'll talk about if you are doing it on purpose in a second. But this is the fine line that we tread. You're playing these games with, maybe sometimes strangers, but a lot of times, even after time, maybe they become your friends, and you don't want to um, hurt your friends emotionally in the game. You want everybody to have fun. You want it to be dramatic. You want it to if they die or something happens to them, you want it to mean something in the story, and you want them to be uh, okay with it meaning something in the story. Like they should be, I don't want to say proud that their character got injured or died or whatever, but that pushed the story forward, right? They were pivotal in doing that. And sometimes this happens because they make the player makes an obvious sacrifice of their character. If you're following my my actual plays, like Mike did with his character Lachlan in the Astonishing Swordsman campaign, he basically stayed back against all odds to keep the enemy at bay so that the rest of the party could escape. But sometimes you just get bit by a poison spider and die. That's just the way it is. And I've said before, I think I have a video called, I think it gets on this channel, there's no, meaningless deaths, and that's true. I think it's true if the characters and the players all kind of get around this thing. Like, if you think about it, anytime you're on an adventure, it's dangerous. Things could happen, right? Things could happen. You could be injured. You could die. But at the same time, you don't want the players to feel like they are like. Let's say that they make the decision to fight an ogre and it kills them. You want to immediately allow that player to bring a new character in right away, right? Or if something happens to their character, they just don't want to play them anymore for whatever reason. Within reason. I think you have to. There's two ways to approach it, and I think what Andy ended up doing, spoilers, but if you listen to the podcast, because you get a lot more information, what he ended up doing was working with her to overcome that situation so she continued to play the same character. I think my messages to him were more in the line of, you need to let her play another character, because it seemed like the other messages were all like, just suck it up and play that character. And I was like, no, that's not how the life should work. It's like in these games, right? Maybe that's how it works in life, I guess, but not in games. We're here to have fun. And what I thought was particularly interesting about this was that our friend E, who we share a chat thing, said something to me like, I can't believe that you're not behind the brutality, because I am a brutal DM, as noted. But again, I said there's a difference between attacking or punishing or whatever the player and the character. It's completely different things. Most of the people that I play with are pretty okay with their characters dying, and they actually enjoy the danger. So that's not me being brutal and making it hard, and is good. They like that. They enjoy it, right? But to do something that makes them effectively unable to play. Now, there were some other things that played into this, and I'm not going to get into all that. But and of course, there's a whole thing going on right now about the wheelchair accessible dungeons. And clearly, if you want to play in a group, or you're in a group, if somebody has a disability, they can be still very functional, in many ways. But that doesn't mean that somebody should, I don't want to say be forced, but be forced to play them, right? It's amazing, right? If you have a player in your group that has a disability and they want to play a character with that disability, or somebody who doesn't have it, I guess, and show how heroic and awesome that can be, awesome. But if you have a player in your group and their character gets their legs bit off by a shark, and then they need to be, in a wheelchair or some other means like that, and they don't want to play that kind of character, or they don't want to do that for whatever reason. Maybe they feel like they can't do it because it's not the kind of character they want to play in this game, or maybe they feel like they can't do it in a way that's sensitive to it, because that's also an issue, right? They need to be allowed to do something else. So this kind of ties into another thing that I've had in my list of things to talk about for a while. But usually I'm too hot-headed when I think of it, so I don't want to do it because I want to try to be positive on this channel, and that is a lot of people on online forums that talk about when there's problem players. The first thing many of these supposed excellent DMs, I guess they're excellent because they're giving advice, say is how that you should basically kill their character or do something to their character or whatever when it's the player that is the problem. So this is the other end of it, right? In Andy's case, he's got an amazing player that has a character that, well, didn't even screw up. It was a bad luck, basically. That was effectively neutered, we'll say, in the skills that she wanted to use, and then the player was kind of trying to play along but not enjoying the game as much. I'll say, based on what I got from it. And then you get the opposite, where it's the player is an asshole, right? And sorry, now I'm swearing. Bleep. The player is a jerk, right? But the solution, instead of being an adult and having a conversation, the solution is, oh yeah, just kill their character or torture their character or screw with their character in some way. This is true of a lot of things, whether it's they're using some kind of skill that maybe you didn't, especially if you're playing a newer game, like let's say 5th edition. Like finding ways around their abilities that their character class should have after you let them play that character class. Instead of just having a conversation and being like, hey, you know what? I said, okay, we could play that Unearthed Arcana, class, but now I'm seeing it's completely unbalancing things, so we need to work on this. I think that, we're adults, right? You should be able to have a conversation. There needs to be talk in between sessions. There needs to be talk about what's going on if something could be I don't want to say instant, if it's something that could be a problem, and ideally we will see those things coming at us, right? Usually we won't, and that's the problem, right? Usually it builds up and then you're just kind of like, oh man, what did I do here? But what you want to try to do is do your best to read the room, for lack of a better word. I think that's a lot easier in person, and many of us who play a lot in person and have now been playing all online, it is trickier. It's definitely trickier to get a sense for how people are feeling. This is true of that kind of thing that we're talking about here, or even the things where like maybe you push something too far, it's going in a weird, gross direction or whatever, and the person's not into it. In person, that person's going to be like, oh God, oh God. But online, they might just mute their mic and be like, because they don't want to disrupt the session, whatever, So we need to try to get a read of our rooms. Generally with me, in fact, I've never experienced this, so I don't know exactly how this works. Maybe somebody who's part of that community can comment here. But I know that I listened to a podcast, Fear of the Black Dragon. Oh God, Fear of the Black Dragon, and one of the hosts, or that's put on by a group called the Gauntlet, and I think that Jason from one of the hosts is one of the main people there. One time he was talking about how when they end their sessions, they always do like a debrief at the end, and I think it's a good idea. I mean, that almost always happens anyways with my group. So it's nothing official, but usually once we stop streaming or we stop playing, we talk for another 10, 15 minutes. And hopefully any weird stuff comes out, whether or not, because sometimes, you might be thinking, oh, this is fun for them because, I'm putting even if they agree to it, right? If somebody said, hey, I agree to that it's going to be tough to be an Aarakocra or whatever, and I know there's going to be a problem, and that's cool, I want that. But then 5 sessions in, they might be realizing, oh, this is way worse than I thought. But they don't want to say anything, So you really have to try to get a read of the room for that kind of stuff, and it's tricky. But one thing I will say is that it's our job, I think, as players and GMs, right? It's everybody's job to make sure everybody's having fun, right? And what we need to do is try to work with people so that can happen. And as a GM, you have a lot of power, right? So you can make changes in the world or do certain things so that your players can enjoy the game more. I'm not saying make it easier for them. I mean, most people are going to enjoy the game when it's a challenge. But, you do things that they might like so that they can enjoy the game. You add little bits and pieces. If somebody likes to do a lot of, problem solving, you add some of that to the adventure. If somebody likes to do a lot of role play, you can add these little scenes, These are things that we can do. And if a player is put in a position where their character, as they were initially created, is compromised, it should be discussed as possibly some solution out of that place, whatever it might be, So that's kind of what this was going to be. But I was going to be more harsh before I found out everything was going on. But clearly, this is what happens. We hear a little bit, right? And I think in my messages to Andy, I was a little bit harsh. But I think that because he's an amazing GM, I think that it's easy to do. It's easy for it to get away from us, right? We think that, oh no, this is cool. They're really role playing this out. But it could also be, yeah, they're doing it because that's what they kind of have to do. But in fact, they would much rather be doing these other things, and they're just sitting there waiting for you to give them the chance to go back to where they were. So we need to keep a beat on this. We need to try to give solutions if the PC is put into a position where they become different in some way than they were. That would mostly be injuries and permanent things. He's playing Call of Cthulhu, so there's a lot of that kind of insanity stuff going on. But I mostly play games where that's not really an issue. It's more you're going to die, so it is what it is, right? But I think we need to consider that, and I think it's super important, right? We want to nurture or help the players enjoy their time and grow and be excited, and they should. It's just like watching a horror movie, right? When you watch a horror movie, you're like, oh god, a good one, anyways. But you still enjoy it, right? So it's like you want when that critical hit happens to your character or they go down or whatever, it should be exciting. It sucks, right? Because you might die, but it's cool, right? But if you have created a situation where it's no longer cool for that player, the things that are happening to them, it feels like that you're just like they don't have any control. They feel like they can't do the thing they wanted to do when they made this character. Then you need to figure some way to make it work. Either switching characters, making a change in the plot, something, right? Anyways, that's what I was going to talk about. The other part I went on a little bit less. I think that if you're going to be, I'll say one more statement about because I wrote Adversarial DM. Always remember that even in a game like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, where there's so many rules that it seems like a player could beat the DM because they could have all these special abilities, be like, I'm untouchable. You can always crush them if you want, the PC, because you're the DM. You can do anything, right? That means you need to be careful. Because you can do that, you have to really consider. It's like Uncle Ben, right? Or Peter realized after Uncle Ben died, right? With great power comes great responsibility, right? It's important that we as GMs don't do that. If you have a disruptive player, talk to them outside the game. Don't kill their character. That's just stupid. And what it's going to do is make them more disruptive because they're going to be like, oh, whatever. Okay, fine. You're going to kill my character. I'll make another more idiotic character. And then it just builds up. It's like, just have a conversation and be like, hey, you know what? That character's really not fitting this campaign. Let's see what we can do. Either you adjusting how you play the character, or maybe we phase them out and you use a different character. You make it work. It's a group. But I definitely don't recommend being adversarial. You need to be a fan of the players and also the player characters on some level. But that doesn't mean that you let them survive if they shouldn't. What it does mean, though, is that you're sensitive, I guess, on some level, to how the players feel about what's going on in the game. So let me know what you guys think about that. Am I being too soft? And am I going to lose my GM stripes for not torturing my players? If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. If you're a regular watcher, or even if this is your first time, I've got some questions, because I had asked a while back about talking about adventures, because some people had asked me about running modules, because I do mix a lot in. And a gentleman, Eric, emailed me, and we were talking back and forth about it. Because originally I was thinking to maybe go over like something everybody's run, like Keep on the Borderlands. But of course, that's been done a million times. So he had actually suggested, so I've got a few modules here that I'm considering. What I'm probably going to do is run them. Some of them I've run already, but I'll run them for my group, and then I'll talk about how I'm going to change them and what I would change to kind of to make them more the style that I like to run. So they are as follows. I dug them up for you. This I have never run. The Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-chan. I'm not sure if I said that right. So this is really an interesting module. Really interesting module. And it does, in fact, it's the deluxe set with over 15 illustrations. This looks like it's from 1981. I think this one may have been a tournament module. I'm not 100% sure. But I know this one was. Lost Caverns of Sokan. Okay. This one's really interesting to me because this version of it is, my understanding is anyways, is quite different than the tournament module, because this was a tournament module. So that could be interesting. I was considering running the tournament version of it if I can find it somewhere as a tournament to score it and stuff. So that might be something to play with. The other one, which I have run, I actually ran it for my 5th edition group. I used it as a side quest. Is the this guy here, which is the Dwellers of the Forbidden City. This one is a really cool module. It's by David Cook. Oh, I should probably say that too. So that's part of it too, right? The first two are oh no, this one's Jeff Johnson. Tomo-chan is Jeff Johnson. No, Harold Johnson and Jeff Leeson. I don't know if I know those guys, but I can tell you this: David Cook, right, is the man. So this is a great module. All that being said, those are the 3 he suggested, but I actually was considering this one, White Plume Mountain, which is probably my favorite module of all time. And also, this has a little bit of substance maybe outside the OSR, because this was in that 5th edition reprint of some of those modules, which, by the way, I bought so I could get some stats on things for this. And if you are playing 5th edition and you want to run White Plume Mountain, and that's the only reason why you're going to buy that book, don't buy it. Because they don't have any good stats. They have no stats that are worth using. Just buy the original module. It's way better. And all that being said, this is a classic and Tomb of Horrors, right? And the reason why I might talk about this is because I think this module is very, very misunderstood. So those are my options of modules I might talk about. If you guys are interested, I mean, I guess if you don't want me to talk about modules, then you could say that too. But if there's any of these modules that you think would be cool to run, or for me to talk about and probably run meaning that you could watch the actual plays if you want, then let me know, because that's something I'll work on, in the next months or so, as I find time. I love the idea of, oh man, and I'm drawing a blank on the YouTube channel, but I found this YouTube channel, and I'll put a link below. It's called like Adventure something, and there's only about 10 videos. It looks like he made some videos for a few months and stopped, maybe like a year ago or whatever, maybe a little bit less. And he's going over all really old stuff, like literally like the stuff from like the original stuff, like 1975, things that were appearing in various like the Dungeoneer magazine and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I'll put a link if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But he talks about Lost Caverns of Sokan, so which is the original tournament version. So which means it must be out there somewhere, because he showed it. Anyways, I think those are super interesting. Let me know, guys, if that's something that interests you. If there's something else you want me to talk about. I know I said I was going to talk about the demi-humans, but I'm going to space those out. I got to find out. To be honest, I don't have that much to say about dwarves off the top of my head. I'd have to really think about it, because oh god, this is gonna kill me in the OSR world. But dwarves are just not my favorite class. I know people love dwarves, but see, I'm following. I mean, they're fine. I mean, I don't. Dwarf is probably the last demi-human class that I would typically run myself. So maybe that's a good reason for me to explore it. I think they're very interesting. But to me, they were always just fighters. They're just better fighters than fighters. So if you want an Infravision fighter, then you play a dwarf. Like, I never really thought of them outside of that. And maybe that's what I need to do, because that's exactly the point, right? In any case, this has gone on way too long. Oh, wow, it's gone super long. I'm going to upload this now for you guys. So I will talk to you soon.